Okay, we got what is the real problem with yellow paint? Okay, from Blaze. That's the name of my D&D character also as well. Okay. Yellow paint. Let me see.
So there's been a bit of a discourse lately that's been brewing on a few sites like Twitter and whatnot over the last week or so, and it has to do with the nature of signposting in games, which naturally piqued my game design brain's interest to
Mhm.
investigate further. Essentially, what kicked everything off was the demo for the latest installment in the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy. A user
Okay.
posted this image talking about how the yellow paint virus has infected Final Fantasy,
Ah.
referencing how
Uh so like I can only guess. The whole yellow paint thing is referencing like how much a hand holding you want to give the player of your game, and essentially just telling them like, you know, you're not allowing the player to explore, and you're just telling them straight out of the way, like out of the gate, like just go here, just climb here, essentially. There's a lot of other games that do yellow paint. I'm going through like another game again with my buddy. Borderlands 3 does a lot of yellow paint for climb areas, and I think another game that did not yellow paint, but they did green lights was Doom, like Doom 2016. Instead of yellow paint, it was just like if you don't know where to go, look around, look for the green lights, go for the green lights. Okay. Um, the yellow paint has infected Final Fantasy VII. I don't know. This is kind of funny because I don't necessarily, me personally, if I'm playing like a single player game, I never actually thought about this. Like if I'm in like single player game mode, I'm just chilling and trying to turn my brain off and like, you know, I'm not trying to exercise my brain when I'm playing a single player game. I'm just, you know, those like moving sidewalks that are like at airports or escalators, bro. I am literally just trying to stand on the moving sidewalk or just walk, like just get on the escalator and just be still. That's what I'm trying to do when I'm playing like a single player game. If I want to exercise my brain, I'll play like some multiplayer game. But I mean, admittedly, there is probably like some amount of people that would like less yellow paint in a game, which is fine and understandable. Uh, but I don't think there's anything like wrong with it. Like maybe could there be like an option in like the gameplay settings, like turn on or off yellow paint? Because like obviously you could like if the yellow paint wasn't here, like you could pretty much tell like where you're supposed to go just because aren't these rocks like essentially the same exact fucking rocks? Like just look for the rocks that look the same and just get there. Um yeah, like have it just be like an option for like accessibility or whatever.
a lot of modern titles have been using random splatterings of paint, typically yellow or white, to
Yeah.
help direct players as to where they need to go. And it seems like a lot of players are starting to get tired of this trope.
Mm.
Now, to explain, what this is a game
Oh.
design
Oh, ain't no yellow paint in Skyrim. But the thing with Skyrim is that the yellow paint is you'll never see the yellow paint in Skyrim because the yellow paint is on the bottom of the horse's hoofs because you get on your horse and you can damn near travel like 90 degrees up almost anything, save buildings. But like there's a mountain, this mountain right here, get on your horse, or like you could pretty much just jump up this bitch. Just get on your horse, and then yeah, you could just go up that shit, dude. The yellow paint in Skyrim is on the horse's hoofs.
element called signposting. And signposting is a pretty self explanatory concept. It is quite literally just any means of helping direct a player
Uh,
towards more of a game's content.
oh, also signposting, which is like kind of handholdy. I mean, but this, like, would they have signposts in at like the actual world of Skyrim? I don't know, maybe. Like, would there be that much like forethought in Skyrim, like the world of Skyrim? Like this sign does not take me like out of my immersion, essentially. Yes, like, does it? I don't know. I mean, it looks like a fucking sign. Like, it looks like the sign should be there. Um, but did they have signs like this back in the day? I don't know. Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't. But who cares about like realism in a fucking video game? Like, if you want realism in a video game, I don't know. Like, you have to have some sort of like temporary suspension of disbelief if a sign is gonna just literally just take you out of the immersion.
Content, the same way that you might come across a literal sign helping direct people towards a nearby town. Signposting itself can take many distinct forms. Something as simple as a mini-map with icons on it or a quest
Well, yeah,
marker is a form of signposting that directs a player towards.
bro. I don't know. Like, I thought this was fine with Skyrim. I like signposting because I'm not, like I said, I'm not trying to remember every one of these fucking locations in the game. Like, I open the map and eventually you see all this shit, but like, bro, you want me to not have any of these like little things here? What?
Content using the game's user interface. But many games these days are trying to implement more diegetic signposting, meaning that instead of using a meta element, such as the aforementioned quest markers in the UI, they're trying to incorporate their signposting more into the world itself, using things like literal signs that exist in the world, or other techniques such as lighting the path you need to traverse, or yes,
Oh,
covering.
that is actually a good secondary option because I think a game that didn't necessarily like a game that didn't do this like directly well, but it kind of like indirectly did the whole lighting thing really well was I think Splinter Cell. Splinter Cell back in the day, like 1, 2, and 3, and like all the little other ones afterward, Chaos Theory and whatnot. If you had no idea where to go in Splinter Cell, you just look at the lights. And because essentially you are shooting the lights out wherever you are going, or like where you're about to like, intercept some dude in a path or something like that. So if you like get lost or turned around somewhere, you just be like, oh, there's a light over there. Let me go shoot that out. And then maybe like a guy will like cross your path and like you keep going. It's like, oh, I never been here.
Things in yellow paint, which brings us to the topic of discussion. Why are so many people getting upset at this use of yellow paint as a form of signposting? Well, first things first, there is one argument that I've seen.
Well, maybe if it's like, I could understand why people would be like tired of yellow paint if it's like insanely obvious. Like if there's like no real, like if the yellow paint is like there directly to further like highlight the path that you're supposed to go, well then it's like it kind of breaks your immersion a little bit. But I don't know, I've never really played a game where there's like abhorrent usage of yellow paint.
That I think is mostly a straw man argument, or at the very least I hope it is, which is that some people are just saying that signposting as a concept is overly handholdy and players should have to actually explore and understand their environment to progress instead of you having the game tell you where to go so explicitly. Now, the reason why I hope that this is not a real argument that people are making is because nearly every game worth its salt has signposting in it.
Yeah.
Something as simple.
Well, yeah, because what do you go off of that makes you think a game is good or bad? Well, generally people use things like units sold in like net revenue or whatever, net profit or whatever. And with those taken into account as the main forms of acceptance to like what is a good and bad game, all the best games have lots of signposting and hand holding. Because if you want to appeal to a lot of people, you have to, unfortunately, or fortunately, you have to appeal to the lowest common denominator. And you can't depend on the player to, or at least the masses of players, to play your game in the intended way that you want them to. You have to make it simpler than Like, you just have to make it simple. Period.
As how Mario starts on the left side of the screen and faces towards the right is a form of signposting that tells the player which direction
Yeah.
they need to go in order.
Yeah. Start left, go right. You can like jump high or jump short or jump fast or sprint or whatever. But yeah, just go right.
To progress. The fact of the matter is that most games need to have signposting in them to help direct players as to where they need to go,
Bro,
especially as games grow.
Bro, imagine shitting on Mario because the signposting in Mario is like it takes you out of your immersive experience. Oh my god, I can't play Mario. I wish sometimes I would start on the right. I wish sometimes I would start in the center and
More complex and detailed, and the way forwards becomes less and less inherently obvious. And also keep in mind, signposting isn't always just about directions. It can also be used to denote things like what you can and cannot interact with in a level, like how in Half-Life 2, all of the boxes with actual supplies in them are designed to be extremely unique in shape to help differentiate them from all the other generic breakable crates in the game, so that the player doesn't have to waste time breaking every box they come across hoping that it'll have supplies in it. Stuff
okay.
like that is still technically a form of signposting.
Yeah.
However, despite how absurd the idea of removing all forms of signposting from a game is, that is not to say that the people decrying the use of yellow paint are necessarily wrong. There is clearly an issue here that needs to be addressed,
Yeah.
and I think that Sam Winkler, a narrative director at Gearbox, put it best.
Let me see. The instinct for all of us to say every playtest proves over and over that gamers at large actually need the hints. Well, yeah, this is pretty true, is correct. But we can learn something about the complaint at large. People want to be handled, but they don't want to know they are being handled. This is like a different way of putting it. Like, players want to be handled, but they don't want to be known that they are being handled. Yeah, this is pretty true, I would say, at least for the this is true for the masses of gamers. Obviously, this is probably not true when it comes to like each individual. Every individual is going to have their own preference on, it's like a gradient essentially, or a spectrum, if you will, of like, I want to be like something like PoE, essentially. Like, you look at the passive skill tree, and in the beginning, you're like, holy shit, this is insane. You look at the passive skill tree, and there's no real hand-holding when the game tries to teach you how to like make a character, or lack thereof teaching you how to make a build. There's a lot of free form that you can explore with something like that. Or you could look at something like, I don't know, the Dark Souls series or any Souls-like game. At least the Souls, like 1, 2, 3, and whatever, those games don't really have a lot of hand-holding. It's just they throw you in there and good luck. That's probably like a little bit more on the extreme, in this about the same vein as like PoE, in terms of like how free form that you can like allow the player to like go wherever, do whatever. But like, what's something like that's on like the polar opposite side? Well, I would probably say something like a Call of Duty campaign, like any Call of Duty campaign. It's literally start at point A, get to point B, and once you cross certain thresholds in like your travelings of it, it's just a cutscene. Okay, you get to the next point, guys flow out. Okay, shoot them all, kill them all, whatever, great. Get to the next point, little cutscene. That's like a handholdy type of experience right there.
Inevitably, in almost any given game, players will need to be handled at some point, but they don't want to know that they're being handled. Essentially, what he's getting at is that signposting absolutely always needs to be in a game. Anyone who has done any amount of playtesting can confirm how frustrating it can be to watch a new player have absolutely no idea where to go in your level. But people don't like having their hand held. They want to feel like they figured out the path forwards themselves, even though usually they'll end up needing some help along the way.
Yeah.
The ultimate lesson here is that ideally, signposting needs to be something that is simultaneously obvious while also being something that is invisible so that the player doesn't even realize that they're being led around by the designers. Now,
Yeah.
that might sound like a paradox, but I think that this is actually very similar in concept to things like how good tutorials are designed or
Yeah.
even how good CGI is used in a movie. If you
Very
watch
true.
channels like Corridor Digital or
No CGI is really just invisible CGI by the movie Rabbit Hole.
any other visual effects artists, then you're probably familiar with the term of the best CGI is invisible.
Yeah.
Lots of people decry the use of CGI in movies because it makes things look fake.
What is this? Like the Maverick? What the fuck was that movie called? Top Gun Maverick?
But that's because the only CGI you recognize is bad CGI.
Woo!
Whereas the best CGI blends into a scene seamlessly to avoid pulling you out of a movie. Similarly, in games,
Bro, that's
people
crazy.
don't
I thought all those shots were just like, I would know that there's like filters and shit, but like I didn't know a lot of those shots in Maverick were like CGI. That's crazy. That's my first time seeing that shit, dude.
like having to read a million text boxes or look at one of these dumb controller charts for a tutorial.
Yeah.
If you've watched stuff like Aaron's Sequelitis on Mega Man X or the 1.5 million video essays about Super Mario 1-1, then you've no doubt been familiarized with this concept of an invisible tutorial that teaches the player naturally through gameplay without even making the player realize that they're being taught. So essentially, the heart of the issue is how do we direct players with invisible signposts while still making sure that the signs themselves are obvious enough for everyone to see? It's a delicate balance to achieve. When the signposts are too obvious, you get yellow paint and its contemporaries, where everyone just sees it.
Yeah, like go here, go here. The yellow. I don't even know. What is this? Resident Evil? Wait. Was there this much yellow paint in like the original Resident Evil game? What is this, RE3 remake? Bro, I could understand like the yellow paint argument in like a remake of like Resident Evil. Like, oh, there's yellow tape on the window. That must mean I could go through it. I don't remember it being like this in the original Resident Evil game. Was it? There's no way. I could see the argument for that shit for against yellow paint and like RE remake. Yeah.
As blatant handholding. But if it's too subtle, then you risk lots of players getting lost and missing out on content, if not just entirely dropping the game altogether. Well, that's the thing. This isn't actually an argument about signposting. Many people think it's about signposting. I originally thought it was about signposting. But in reality, what's actually being discussed here is the nature of being
Gimme.
Verisimilitudinous.
What the fuck is this word? How does this even exist? Bro, I guarantee you, if you drop this on like a Scrabble board, you literally win Scrabble. The Art of Editing and Suicide Squad by Folding Ideas. Verisimilitudinous. Bro, verisimilitudinous. Is that like 9 syllables? Fuck that word, dude.
That doesn't mean real, that means a plausible simulation of real.
A plausible simulation of being real?
You know it's fake, but it feels acceptable. You can buy in. You can suspend disbelief.
Oh wait, is this that like uncanny valley thing in terms of like CGI, like realism, like something like you'll know like if something is getting realer and realer, and then there will be a point where it's like the technology will get better, but it's like it loses its shit, or it's like you start to recognize it, like this is obvious that it's fake, this is obvious that it's fake, and then it has to progress like exponentially, and then once it's fucking progressed exponentially, then it's like, oh shit, this is photorealistic. I couldn't even tell that those shots in Top Gun Maverick were fake. Yeah, the Top Gun shots in Maverick were probably like way up there, but like there's probably like a good chunk of like movies and video games that try to say that's like, oh, this is realism or whatever, but they just simply fall in the uncanny valley chunk.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Dan Olson. But yeah, it's that. The issue people have with yellow paint isn't that it's just a form of signposting, it's that it isn't a verisimilitudinous form of signposting. It doesn't feel like it fits in.
For real though, who was going around painting all these boxes? Yeah, I mean it's the devs, and this literally should not be in fucking Resident Evil. Like I don't remember yellow paint in original Resident Evil 3 on the GameCube back in the day. This is just bad.
In the world that is being established by the game. Having all of these random handholds and other markings just so happen to be covered in the same yellow paint just looks weird and out of place without some kind of justification. Like, let's compare this to some other games, such as Valve's catalog with Half-Life and Portal, which, by the way, for those of you who don't know, most of Valve's games include developer commentaries that can be a great way to learn some game design fundamentals for those of you that are interested.
Ooh.
But one thing that gets brought up a lot in some of these discussions is how they direct players throughout their games. A very common technique that they like to use is to place the player in a darker environment and then use light to direct the player to the path forwards. There's a million ways to justify a simple light source existing in the environment, so it almost never feels strange or out of place. Sure, having only a single street lamp working might seem weird in the real world, but in a post-apocalyptic setting like Half-Life where everything is run down and decrepit, it makes sense the player doesn't question it. But they use lots.
Yeah, I mean, I think lights are like a fine usage of like a sign posting or hand holding or whatever. I never pay attention to lights. I'm just like, ooh, a light, just go there. I'm never questioning whether or not the light is hand holding me.
Lots of much more obvious and explicit forms of signposting too. For example, I've seen some people bring up how blatant some of the graffiti in Portal is, with literal arrows pointing the player towards hidden content because playtesters kept on missing it.
Yeah, that's fair.
But there's two interesting points to be made about this. For one, like I said, I think that this feels a lot more verisimilitudinous because it's immediately understandable that another human being left these messages, because you're walking through a test chamber that clearly other people have gone through. So it adds to the story that you aren't the first test subject to go through these trials, and there might have been many, many more people before you who have lost their minds in these chambers. Of course, people would leave graffiti in that circumstance, especially if they found something that they want future test subjects to try and find as well. But the second thing that I find interesting and kind of hilarious when people talk about Portal signposting is that they rarely talk about the actual main test chamber levels themselves. Like, you cannot get much more explicitly signposted than you do in Portal's fundamental level design.
Yeah.
Every chamber is a featureless white room with almost nothing to interact with beyond the relevant puzzle elements. Like,
yeah. I mean, the thing with Portal is like, if you were to take away all of those like little graffitis or whatever, I don't know if as many people would have liked the game on a whole. Like, there would probably have been like way less people like getting to the end of the game, and in general, people usually look to people that have like played the game or any game in its entirety. From beginning to end in order to get like a good review. Like, if someone is like just playing a game and they're just like stuck on like a part for a couple hours and then they end up quitting the game, what do you think that person is most likely gonna leave a review about the game about? Like, are they gonna leave a favorable review, or are they gonna leave like a shitty review? Like, oh, this game sucks. I got stuck at this one puzzle. I have no idea how to do it. Blah blah blah. Whatever.
buttons and cubes. Every button has an explicit label on it with a dotted line directing you to what puzzle element it interacts with. Every level's exit door is explicitly designed and labeled the exact same way to ensure that the player knows exactly where the goal of each level is and what needs to be done to unlock it. I mean, hell, there is a literal gigantic 10-foot tall glowing sign at the start of every level that tells you what every element you have to interact with will
Yeah.
be for that level. And yet, I've seen almost nobody involved in this discourse, even when explicitly talking about Portal, ever bring this up. And why is that? Because Portal explicitly takes place in a setting where you're navigating artificially created test chambers created by humans for other humans to navigate and solve. If you took Portal's test chamber signposting and put it in virtually any other game, then yeah, it would be just as, if not far more, blatantly
Yeah.
handholdy and out of place
Yeah.
as some people claim yellow paint is. But
Yeah.
because of the setting that is established for Portal, these puzzle elements work perfectly fine as a means of directing the player to where they need to go and what they can and cannot interact with.
So if you're gonna have hand holding in the game or signposting, you have to have it match the setting of the game. So in that respect, yeah, if there's just arbitrary yellow paint in fucking like Resident Evil or Skyrim, then yeah, it's gonna be a little egregious.
This is also why, whenever you finally break free of the test chambers in Portal, suddenly all of the explicit puzzle element signposting completely disappears.
Oh, yeah.
Because it would no longer make any sense for these elements to exist outside of the test chambers. Thus, the game shifts towards much more relatively subtle forms of signposting, like using the aforementioned method of having light sources direct the player instead. Essentially, the main takeaway, in my opinion, is that signposting can be as blatantly obvious as you want as a designer, but only if it makes sense in the world that you establish.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you risk breaking that precious verisimilitudeness
Yeah.
that causes the player to question your level design or otherwise break their suspension of disbelief.
That's
To try
fair.
and bring this discussion towards a close, another example I really want to talk about is how Half-Life 2 literally also uses yellow paint as a form of signposting too.
Yeah.
But it does so in such a way that I don't think anyone complains about. There are a variety of caches with extra ammo and healing items strewn throughout the game, but they're always marked by these spray-painted yellow lambda symbols. So, oh no, they're using yellow paint, that means it's terrible, right? Well, that's the thing. The game provides context for their existence. In Half-Life 2, you were literally traversing a secret underground railroad for refugees trying to escape from the Combine.
Oh yeah,
The-
and surprise, surprise, in the city setting, there's graffiti, and what do you know? It's yellow paint.
It's understandable that they would use some sort of thieves' cant style symbology to try and denote secret caches of supplies for other travelers. It's implied that dozens, if not hundreds of other people have used this railroad before Gordon, and you encounter tons of people that are still actively maintaining it as you make the journey yourself. So of course they've left signs and supplies to help each other out along the way. So that just goes to show that given the right context, even the dreaded yellow paint itself can be used as an effective means of signposting without making it feel too handholdy or like it's breaking the player's immersion.
That's fair.
I mean, to use one more direct example, Horizon Forbidden West also highlights every single ledge and climbable object with a bright yellow marking. But again, the difference is that in Horizon, the main character, Aloy, has a magic iPhone earpiece that can project augmented reality holograms over her vision. So
Bro, you know what's funny? And I'm about to give props to a game that usually, or at least recently, has been just getting L's. Assassin's Creed does building traversal fantastically. When Assassin's Creed first came out, like the very first game, like with Altair and whatnot, everybody was so ecstatic that you could seemingly go on any building, any fucking like fence or whatever, and you could just traverse almost anything in the game. You could climb up it, sprint over it, and do all that jazz. And everyone was just like, there was no yellow paint in that game. All you had to do was just open your eyes, look for a ledge, see what part of the building juts out, figure out if, if it's like a body length away, you could probably get to it. That's a great game that does not do like any sort of hand-holdiness, I think. I mean, if you want to say that like all the buildings have like things and like windowsills and like ledges that you can climb onto, well then yeah, that's a form of signposting. Well then yeah, but for the most part, you can't even tell that you can and can't climb something in Assassin's Creed games. And you gotta give props where props due, and Assassin's Creed does fucking building climbing pretty well.
Naturally, she simply programmed it to highlight ledges like this to help her out on her journeys. So yeah, ultimately, the core...
the fucking Dead Space, the most blatant form of hand-holding. Where the fuck am I supposed to go? And then it just does the little hologram line.
of this whole issue is really more about the fact that more and more games are trying to implement more diegetic gameplay elements. Stuff like how every element of Dead Space's UI is meant to be justified in universe.
Yeah.
But some developers seem to struggle with implementing certain elements like signposting into their game's universe seamlessly. And to be fair, I think I do prefer to be guided by the game's level design and art assets more than a simple compass or minimap. But if your signposts are going to be as blatantly obvious and out of place as just highlighting every interactable object with random unjustified yellow paint splatters or something to that effect, then maybe you might as well just make it a part of the game's UI instead, as that might be less immersive breaking than trying to eat your cake and have it too.
Yeah.
After all, there are also plenty of really simple signposting techniques that still don't rely on stuff like minimaps, while also trying to not be diegetic. Things like how in some games you can simply hit a button to automatically rotate the camera in the direction that you're meant to go, or maybe a different button that highlights every interactable object on screen for a few seconds. These sorts of things, in my opinion, work really well to help guide players that are stuck, and it's a technique that simultaneously isn't trying to be diegetic while also avoiding cluttering the screen with excess permanent UI elements. It's available at all times for anyone that might get stuck at any part of a game, while also being completely invisible and unnecessary so that players that don't get stuck aren't forced to use them. Ultimately, I do understand why so many games use yellow paint. It's really simple, effective, and easy to implement, and you want your game to be completable by as many people as possible. So you're going to want to minimize the amount of time that any given player might be lost or not know what to do. And really, at the end of the day, it's not that big of a deal. Like, I don't think anyone is actively going to avoid a game like Resident Evil 4 or Final Fantasy 7 just because it has yellow paint in it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
If you're unable to...
Like, I haven't played either of these games. Like, I played original RE4. Is this 4, I think? I played original RE4. I didn't play the remake yet. I will probably get around to playing it. I haven't played, like, Final Fantasy 7. I will eventually get around to playing it. I'm not going to not play it just because it has some fucking yellow paint on it.
To get the time or resources to implement something better, then typically you're going to want to lean a little bit more on the hand-holdy side of things, since that's going to help out more players than it's going to annoy.
Yeah.
But I do think it is also completely fair to call games out for having poorly implemented diegetic signposting.
True.
In the same way that people call out games for having overly hand-holdy, unskippable tutorials.
True.
It is something worth critiquing that could be done a lot better, and if nobody says anything, then developers won't have any reason to try and improve their techniques. So yeah. Thank you all for watching, and as always, I'm happy to continue the conversation in the comments down below. What's your stance on the whole yellow paint debate? Do you think I'm right in saying that it's less about the nature of signposting and more about how well integrated the signposting is in the game's...
It's 100% more about how well it's integrated into the game. Like, if I'm playing some, like, Dungeons and Dragons type of game, you can hold my hand, but just do it in a way that I can't fucking tell that you're holding my hand. If you want to put some signs in there, do it like fucking Skyrim did or whatever, with the little tree in the ground and fucking just little wood planks with like, oh, go this way for that city, that way for this city. that stuff is fine because it's believable and it fits the setting.
World, or do you think it's something else? Feel free to let me know. And if you liked what you saw, remember to leave me a like, and if you want to see me make more videos like this, then make sure to subscribe and ring the bell so that you can get notified of when I make more videos in the future. And if you really want to help the channel grow, then you can become a member or donate to my Ko-Fi to help me keep doing what I'm doing. But for now,
Nice.
thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next one.
Yeah. I mean, it's a valid critique of games that have like yellow paint. Like if it's like obvious that the paint is there for the only reason that it's there is to like point you in the direction, well then yeah, it probably shouldn't be there, and you need to figure out how to point the player in a direction that you want them to go in a more, I don't know, concealed way, I'll say. But yeah, like the yellow paint is just like, it's like a lazy way of doing it. But yeah, I like the video. I'm a fan, and I hope you make more stuff like this. Yeah, 100%, dude. I liked it, and I'm waiting to see more. But that's pretty much it for me. I'll catch you guys in the next one. All right, later.